Hi there. Thank you for taking the time to watch this Astranti theory revision video. Now, as you can probably see from what I've got up on screen, we're gonna be spending a bit of time with somebody called Drucker, who has some really interesting and useful models that focus on how effective objectives can be used for successful management. And you'll be learning a bit more about that in a bit. What you probably can't see on screen is how important it is for you to know and understand these models if you happen to be taking your E2 or MCS exams, as they are very likely to come up. So for the next perhaps 15 minutes or so, I'm going to pass you over to a very capable Astranti tutor who's going to talk you through everything you need to know about Drucker's models. So let's get started.
Now, a common problem faced by a lot of organisations is that employees don't really know what's expected of them, and many employees just work their set hours and could possibly just leave as soon as their hours are up, regardless of whether they've completed their work or whether they've done a good job or whether they've been focused on the organisation's goals. And Drucker's management by objectives is a way to counter that, because it's managing, as you may guess from the name, by objectives. And so, for example, the employee's job is complete when their objectives are complete. And this gives the employees something really tangible to work towards, and they know exactly what is expected of them. But if the staff objectives aren't aligned to the organisation's objectives, then however well the targets are set for staff, the organisation isn't going to be moving in the right direction, because of course the staff will be completing tasks that's not really relevant to what the organisation needs to achieve. And so Drucker believed that objectives have to be set at the top of the organisation and relate it to the organisation's mission, and then the objectives should be passed down the organisation to the business units and then on to staff. And so when the staff achieve the targets, the business units that they're in achieve theirs, and so the organisation fulfills its mission. And this is what's called management by objectives. Now, one key aspect of management by objectives is that staff should be involved in the target setting process, both for themselves and the division that they're working in. And Drucker said this because it helps to obtain staff buy-in to the targets while also making sure that they're realistic. Because if they're not realistic, it could be really unmotivational for staff, because they think, well, I can't achieve these anyway, so they won't try. If they're helping to agree the targets, they're going to think, well, actually, I can do this, and they'll be motivated towards achieving them. Now, Drucker proposed 5 steps for effective management by objectives, and the steps in this process are, let me bring them up. Step number 1 is set. Now, this is setting the organization's objectives. What exactly does the company want to achieve? So we know, for example, in Bob's company in the introduction, he wanted good profits, but he also wanted the best customer service in his area. And so this would be the first thing that's agreed upon in Drucker's managers by objectives. What is the organisation trying to achieve? And then we come on to our second stage, which is aligning the employee objectives. So this is about making sure the employees have the correct tasks so the organisation achieves the goal it set in the set stage. So, for example, let's just stick with our customer service target. Well, maybe the staff would be set the target of responding to all customer queries within a day. So what we can see there is a tangible target that the staff can achieve that will then feed in towards the organisation achieving its goals directly. Then after align, we come to the third of the 5 stages, which is monitor performance. So this is about making sure the organisation has a way of checking that the objectives are being met. So for example, if we stick with our customer service idea, then it would be good for the organisation to have a review of customer queries at the end of the day to make sure that everyone is answering the queries within that day and no queries are left waiting around for longer than a day. Then after the performance has been monitored, We then move on to the evaluate performance stage. Who has been meeting their objectives and who hasn't? So to do this, the organisation needs a way of quantifying whether the objective has been met or not, and who or hasn't met them. So perhaps there's online project checklists for every employee, for example. And then our final of the 5th stages is review and feedback. So let's say, for example, that 10 of the employees have met the objectives and 10 haven't. Well, then the organisation needs to provide positive feedback to those that met the objectives, and then tell, or suggest, I should say, ways the other 10 could improve so that they can meet their objectives in the future, because of course this is all going towards the organisation achieving its goals. Now this also applies to review at higher levels too, so that the departments and business units targets are reviewed and made sure that everything is on course for the organisation to achieve its targets and any lessons are learned. So there we go, there's our 5 stages of Drucker's management by objectives. What we're moving on to now though is another theory of Drucker, and that's Drucker's 8 key objectives. And this all stems from Drucker suggesting that a company cannot survive if they are only going to focus on the profit objective, because the profit objective is a measure of short-term success only. So, for example, a company may be profitable, but what if a competitor beats them introducing a new innovation, and then the company, although profitable, subsequently fails? So let's have a real-world example for this. Who knows Nokia? Well, they were the biggest phone company in the world, but they failed to appreciate the impact of smartphones on the market, and suddenly, who amongst you now has a Nokia phone? And so what we're saying with these 8 key objectives is that to be successful, the company has to succeed in a range of different areas of the business. So to do this, they're going to have to set multiple objectives in regards to performance and results that don't just focus on short-term monetary gains. So let's have a look at the 8 key objectives. We've got market standing, innovation, productivity, physical financial resources, manager performance, worker performance, public responsibility, and profitability. So let's work through each of these 8 key objectives in turn. So the first is market standing. So here objectives would be set according to where the company is in relation to its competitors, so where it stands in the market. Now, an increased market share would suggest success in marketing and sales, product quality and reputation. So an improved market standing suggests a longer term performance. So that's one measure of how an organization is performing, and we can see how these kind of little measures are suggesting long-term performance rather than just a focus on profitability. The next key objective is innovation. Now, innovation costs money in research and development, and so in the short term, profit will be reduced. However, new products or changed designs of existing products generate higher profits long term and keep the company ahead of the competition. And we've seen, haven't we, with Apple, they've constantly innovated the iPod, the iPhone and the iPad in the 2000s, and they've secured their success for many, many years after that. So again, innovation, another objective, because it's securing the company's long-term security and profitability, again, rather than just focusing on the short-term measure of profitability. How profitable is the company right now? Okay, the next key objective is productivity. So basically, productivity measures the best use of resources. So basically, a measure of this might be the output over a period of time or per employee. And of course, this measure shows how well the company is working, and an increases in productivity shows that the organization is working well, becoming more efficient, which in the future will probably lead to higher profitability. But if, on the other hand, productivity is dropping, then that is in the long term again going to affect the company. Okay, the next objective is physical and financial resources. So these are objectives regarding the use, the acquisition and maintenance of capital and monetary resources. An example of this could be a positive cash flow, because a positive cash flow would be a good measure of the organization's ability to pay creditors as invoices fall due or purchase any extra inventory if required. And so by using a measure like that, it shows that the organization is being successful in its acquisition and maintenance of capital and monetary resources. The next objective is managerial performance and development. So this is looking at how well managers are performing and making sure that they are performing effectively. So for example, our finance manager is going to have objectives based on accuracy and timeliness of financial reports, and training objectives would make sure that managers are continuously learning and developing, so again the company is improving over the long term. The next key objective is worker performance and attitude. So the more effective the workers, the better their motivation and productivity. Now that means if they are effective and better at their jobs, that they may also stay at the company longer too, which means the company doesn't have such a high turnover, which it won't have to spend so much on recruitment and training. So objectives in this area might include worker productivity targets or staff satisfaction survey results. So you can see what we're doing here is measuring each of these key areas of a business. So we're moving away of just focusing and measuring profitability. Instead, we're measuring and evaluating lots of different areas of a business to make sure it has long-term success. Okay, public responsibility is about considering corporate social responsibility and ethics. Basically, it's awareness and its commitment to the wider stakeholders, the external environment, making sure that the business has a really strong reputation and trying to avoid any costly legal issues. So, for example, a car manufacturer might have objectives related to the safety of its vehicles or its emission levels. The next objective is profitability. And although we've been saying don't measure profitability, of course, we're not saying ignore profitability. We're just saying it's also important to measure other key areas as well as profitability, because profitability is a really good measure of current performance. But what we're trying to include with these other areas is measuring areas which indicate strong long-term performance as well. Now, every organization is different, and the key to success is to balance the objectives. So making sure the organization has a variety of short, medium and long-term objectives that aren't just focused on generating a profit, because remember we saw with innovation, it's really costly. So if you just focused on generating a profit, you might not try and innovate your products, but instead focusing on objectives that are about developing the company and those that are involved with the company.
So there we go. I hope you found that really helpful and insightful. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, you'll actually see along the left there, and indeed if we go forward in the presentation, that there's actually much more information you could be learning about, because these two models, they're just one small part of our entire E2 and MCS syllabus. And of course, if you want to be taking these exams maybe now or maybe in the future, then you'll want access to everything you need and all the information that's required for you to really ace those exams. Of course, we have full tuition videos for every area of these syllabi. And if you're somebody who prefers to read while you study, we have study texts that can go alongside these, as well as revision notes, which offer a more condensed version of this in case you need a quick refresher or you prefer to take some notes. Of course, on top of that, we have hundreds of practical questions that you can use to test your knowledge before you go in on exam day. And that's not all. If you are new to Astranti, you can actually get a few freebies by going onto our website. That's www.astranti.com. Because if you're not sure, you can give our products a try and see if you think they would be right for you and your studies. And of course, as always, we would really appreciate it if you take the time to give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more great tips and more great theory revision videos for your CIMA exams. Good luck, and thank you again for taking the time to listen.